like when you joined the party, and became a delegate and yeah, became involved in your state party, like you agreed that you were going to respect the wishes of the delegates at the national convention. If you can't do that, you can leave and you can join a different party. You can form your own party. You can get behind an independent candidate. But yeah, like you can't just like what's even the point in having a
Yes.
national convention if state parties can just decide, you know what, we don't like the candidate, we're not going to endorse it. Like,
The opinions and attitudes expressed by guests on the Fountainhead Forum do not necessarily reflect the opinions and attitudes of the Fountainhead Forum or the opinions and attitudes of Chris Baker. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 307. I'm talking to Rose Leatherman, who is heavily involved with the Libertarian Party of the state of New York here in the USA. We're going to talk about some of the things that have been going on recently with the Libertarian Party, New York, but just here in the USA to try to give people a glimpse of what's going on and maybe how we can make things better moving forward. Are you, by the way, Rose, are you in New York City or do you want to say, you don't have to say exactly where you are, but if you're not,
oh no, I'm in the upstate area. Yeah,
oh,
we like to consider ourselves completely separate from those city people.
yeah, west,
We
north.
even if we're hardcore open borders libertarians, most of us would support building a wall around New York City.
Oh, yes. What's the biggest city you're closest to? Or
Syracuse. So
okay,
we're kinda right smack dab in the center of the state, which is how we try to sell Syracuse as the location for, LP conventions because, yeah, we can say, "Hey, we're right in the middle of the state," and it's just so convenient that, it's within easy driving distance for me.
yeah, New York is really spread out. It's kind of a fun. I don't know why they probably should have divided it up into a couple states if they could have, but
Oh, I could rant about that for the whole episode, but I think you wanted to talk about other stuff.
yeah, it's yeah, but anyway, so when did you first become a libertarian and an ideological libertarian, and when did you get involved with the Libertarian Party?
Well, okay, for as far as when I became an ideological libertarian, pretty much from as early as I can remember. I have memories of being in, like, kindergarten and just not recognizing authority from the beginning, being like, "Why is it that these grown-ups are allowed to tell us what to do? Why do they get to have control over us?" And I remember, like, I have very fond memories of trying to explain this to my classmates. I'm like, "You know, if we all just refused to do our homework or refused to come in from recess, there's nothing they could do, right?" And I have memories of everyone just looking at me like I was insane. So I guess you could say I was born a libertarian. I've always just been the naturally contrarian, naturally skeptical type. As far as when I got involved in the Libertarian Party, well, so from I guess I think it was around 15 when I became or when I first started identifying as an anarchist. I started out like as a left-wing anarchist, reading people like Emma Goldman and Bakunin, Kropotkin. Um, let's see, went through a very brief phase where I was an Obama Democrat because I felt I had to outgrow anarchism. Um, around that time, after Obama went on to start several new wars, detain whistleblower or detain people indefinitely, prosecute whistleblowers, I started paying attention to the Libertarian Party. But like at the time, I'm like, okay, they have a lot of the right ideas, but they never really I don't know. They never really took those ideas and took them to their conclusions, or so I thought. So, like, I identified probably most closely with the Libertarian Party as far as political parties went. However, I was hesitant to actually join them, at least until COVID happened, and then
Yeah.
like I found it so disappointing because the Libertarian Party should have been the one party that was taking a strong stance on COVID, but like they would kind of toy with speaking out against the lockdowns, but they wouldn't take a strong enough stance. It was like they were afraid to take a definitive stance because then, "Oh, hey, if this turns out to be really bad, then we'll look bad later." So, that was around the time when I started really following certain, influencers within the libertarian circles, and I started hearing about this faction of the party called the Mises Caucus, which said that they were going to restore the Libertarian Party back to its roots, like hardcore anti-imperialism, anti-state, and they were the only faction of the party that was actually taking a strong anti-lockdown stance. So that was when I decided, okay, I'm going to get involved and I'll join the New York chapter of the Mises Caucus, which, and at the time, like the people who started it were very cool people. There were a ton of like very principled ideological libertarians in the New York chapter. That was also when I started getting involved in, so this would have been around, I think, like late 2020. And that was also when I started getting involved in like my county chapter and with the, and then I think, yeah, 2022 was when I joined New York or the LPNY state committee and started getting involved in various subcommittees within New York as well.
You know, I can think back to that way too, though. The whole why do we let people tell us what to do? It's so and
Huh?
how did you get access to how did you get a hold of Goldman and Bakunin when you were 15?
Um, well, part of it was my sister, actually. I mean, okay, I became part of the punk scene, so naturally, like, I think I guess you could say punk bands got me into being anti-war. So then
Yeah,
I was like, my sister would like, she would hear me ranting and raving about the state and the war machine, and like she was very into feminism, still is. She's like, "You should read Emma Goldman." She was an early 1900s anarchist and feminist, so she introduced me to anarchist literature.
I just wonder because I realize that the internet has just made all of this so much easier, and
Mm. I actually found, Emma Goldman's autobiography in my high school library, oddly enough.
yeah,
That's great.
I would occasionally find some, I really the first big libertarian I read myself was Thomas Jefferson, and that's because I could get him at the library, and I read Thomas Paine there too, although I don't know how libertarian he would be now, but it was so, uh, I don't think people, the old libertarian book catalogs were amazing, but boy, but that was the only place you could get them at the time, and I assume, yeah, and so you got involved in me, that was the thing for me too, though. I have a long history of being I went to my first Libertarian Party event in 1995, and I somewhat drifted away, and really it was the coronavirus stuff that says, "Okay, I gotta get back involved with the Libertarian Party again," and then I just saw, yeah, the
Right, yeah. I felt like I had to do something.
yeah,
So I'm like, somebody needs to take a strong stance against this COVID stuff. So yeah, I got involved one because of the messaging, and two because I was hoping like they would at least have resources that they could connect us with that, like I don't know, local activism we could get involved in that was actually taking a stance against the COVID restrictions. Because New York was one of the absolute worst states to be in. Like we had mask mandates that went into like 2022, if not
yes.
longer.
And is New York State politics largely controlled by New York City?
Oh, yeah, if you're not in the city, you have pretty much no say, aside from, like, above the very local level, yeah, the city decides every election when it comes to, like, state senators or the presidential election. I think oh god, for the last presidential election, I'm pretty sure New York was called for, Harris, like, 2 minutes after the polls closed. Like, yeah, it's beyond rigged here.
But I know Buffalo I've heard Buffalo is actually somewhat conservative for a big city, and I don't know Syracuse and Rochester, but, and
Syracuse, the city itself is blue, but, like, the surrounding areas are pretty red. Like, upstate New York is often described as culturally Midwest. Like, actually, if you go far enough out into the rural areas, you'll start finding, like, Confederate flags, which I always found funny. I'm like, "These people know this isn't the South,
wow.
right?" But, yeah, there are some very conservative areas of New York State.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that Albany is probably even more on the left because most state capitals are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're blue. Syracuse is blue, so I don't know about Buffalo. I assume the city itself is probably blue, but like most of New York, the surrounding areas are probably red.
It's hard. I hear different things out of Buffalo, but it's just so far from New York. I mean,
Yeah.
but so you got involved with the yeah, and I wonder too. I mean, I really, I'd heard various things. And I don't know when I first heard about the Mises Caucus, but I remember getting involved with their Facebook group in early 2020, and then the national one, then actually getting thrown out of it for reasons I have no idea why. But
Very, very common problem.
Yeah, and I think that was actually that was actually around June or 2020, and of course, this was I was starting to see what was going on with the Libertarian Party because to I think LP National handled the convention that year about as well as they could have. I don't think
Oh, yeah.
considering all the circumstances, I can't criticize them for what they did just because they were dealing with impossible circumstances.
Oh, yeah. People like
But
to hit on Jo Jorgensen for, like, having masks at her events and having, like, people spaced out, but that was pretty much required by all venue owners because the state required that too. So, like, yeah, there's only just so much they could do.
but when I went out to hear both Joe and Spike speak, they both spoke for about an hour, and there was like 5 minutes talking about what was happening. As Dave Smith once said, you could have shown up in a time machine at Joe's event, and one of Joe's events, and you wouldn't have known what year it was.
Right.
It was just
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's not a bad libertarian, but I agree with that assessment. Like, yeah, she was very milquetoast.
I think she's a good yeah, I'd say she's a good libertarian, and the thing about Joe was Joe got the nomination because I think she was somebody that everybody could kinda like, and
From
there
what I
wasn't
understand,
anybody
yeah.
there wasn't a never Jorgensen contingent in the party, and there were a lot of other people who were saying never this or never that.
There was Vermin Supreme, and then there was Jacob Hornberger, who I actually really like. Like, he's a great libertarian, but he had the Mises endorsement in, 2020, so the anti-Mises Caucus people were just reflexively against him. Because I remember when I was in the Mises Caucus, I talked to some of these people, I'm like, "So what was your problem with Jacob Hornberger?" Most of them could not articulate why they didn't like him. It was just because he had the Mises endorsement, which just reinforced in my mind at the time that okay, these people don't really have any rational reason to be against the Mises Caucus. They just hate them because blah blah blah. Um, because I mean, yeah, there's no way he would yield to get the Mises nomination now, because yeah, he's a hardcore anti-state, anti-borders libertarian. But yeah, so anyway, I feel like Jo Jorgensen was kind of like the compromise because yeah, once Hornberger and Vermin Supreme were eliminated, she just kind of won by default.
Well, she had the majority in that last round, and they were the other 2 left,
Right.
and once she got the majority, it was over, but Jacob has a Jacob has fought a lot of good fights with his organization, and he's done a whole lot of good work there, but number 1, I've noticed the Libertarian Party seems to bring out doesn't bring out his best qualities,
Oh, probably not.
and, there's a history with him back in the 2002 that some people are still aware of,
Mm,
yeah, it's not,
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, he really kind of walked away for a long time, and, uh curiously enough, Joe Jorgensen had too. I mean, Joe was the vice presidential candidate in '96, and I can't really think of much of anything she did between then and 2020. It was, kind of strange the way some of these people disappeared and then reappeared.
Seems like a recurring theme. People get burned out and they disappear and then they reappear for one reason or another. They're like, "The Libertarian Party needs me now." So,
I would like to see I would like to see Jacob Hornberger run for LNC. I think he's more suited to that if he wants to try to run. I mean, because he's always talking about how the LP does things. So then he should do that instead of using a presidential run to talk about that. But
right.
yeah, I think that's really a problem with the Libertarian Party in general is we have the right people on the bus, but they're not in the right seats on the bus, to use a Jim Collins analogy.
Right. 'Cause I mean, in my opinion, like the purpose of the National Party running candidates is that they're basically going on tour to sell our ideas
Yeah.
because there are plenty of like-minded people out there who they're kind of on board with our ideas, but they haven't really taken those ideas to their logical conclusions yet. Having a an unapologetic libertarian out there spreading those ideas will get those people on board, and then they'll be prompted to join their state and local parties where they can do actual activism, if regardless of whether that's running for local office in winnable races or doing activism, lobbying for certain legal changes.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people out there. I recently responded to a tweet from Angela said, "You've never really seemed like a person who would want to do paperwork anyway."
Mhm.
She said, "You're right, I'm not." And I'm thinking like, "Well, why did you run for chair?" You know,
Yeah, I indeed.
I mean, Karen Ann Harlos, for example, I think is exactly where she ought to be. She likes dealing with that Robert's Rules stuff. She seems to be in the exact the place that fits her abilities to the best. Her abilities are best utilized in the position she's in.
Oh, yeah, no, she was
Some of these
great
people
on,
are not.
when I served on National Platform
Yeah.
Committee. Yeah, her schooling, the rest of the committee on their, own philosophy was yeah, she was great there.
Yeah, I mean, but, I don't wanna be in a li it seems like in the we've got well, I mean, we've got, Nolan Ryan playing basketball and Michael Jordan playing baseball, and I'm just like, "Why do we do this?" We need to switch places or something like that, and I don't wanna coerce people and make them do things they don't wanna do, but that seems like we end up wasting a lot of energy in that ways, and that's the thing for me, Rose. I've seen the Libertarian Party shoot itself in the foot in so many ways.
Oh, yeah, over and over too. Like, they did that during COVID, and then yeah, the Mises takeover, we all had or a lot of us had very high hopes for it, that they were gonna restore the party back to its original purpose, and yeah, that did not exactly go as planned.
Well, the best example that comes to my mind about this is, and again, it is an ideological, but when I lived in Ohio, it was either 2003 or I think it was 2003. They had the state convention on the weekend of Mother's Day. And I
Okay,
just say,
wow.
"Okay, who made this decision and why did you do this?"
Someone who wanted to win and wanted to limit who would show up.
Yeah, it's, little things like that where you're just, uh, it just seems like you're doing things that just, you like you're yeah, I see a lot of stuff like that, and, just
Huh.
not, and sometimes it's gotten to a point, unfortunately, where they shoot themselves in the foot. I'm not really that shocked. It's
Well, having the national convention on Memorial Day weekend, okay, it's really hard to travel because, like, the prices are higher because it's a holiday weekend. Um, the hotels are booked. I've always wondered why. Why have it over a
but
holiday weekend?
people also have that extra day off.
I
I can
get.
fully understand the logic around that. Also, with all the deadlines and dates that you have for submitting your ballot access paperwork and stuff like that, I think that's about when they have to have it, at least in presidential nominating years.
Well, New York has been trying for years, to move it earlier in the year because so that it's before our petitioning period because we lost our ballot access and we're not technically a real party anymore at our during presidential years, like at our spring nominating convention, we have to nominate a placeholder candidate so we can go gather signatures for them, and then it's with the understanding that they'll step down and endorse the candidate that gets nominated at convention. But yeah, it would be so great if we could gather signatures for the actual presidential nominee.
Yeah, well, Texas, for example, we have to have our state convention, I think, on the 2nd weekend of April, and there's no that's a law mandated, so we can't have the national convention much earlier than we do, and there are a lot of things again, there's so many ways that the system is rigged against the Libertarian Party that I don't think I think Americans would be shocked if they investigated, but I also don't think they care. Uh, they don't care that their elections are this corrupt, and yet they claim to believe in democracy. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was a. But there's been. I remember too. My friend used to send out. I had a friend who used often would send out press releases, and a guy for the Columbus Dispatch would get them, and he said, "Well, thanks for sending this to me, Matt." And Matt would point out, "Well, why didn't the Libertarian Party send out a press release about this?" He was, and the guy said, "I wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for you, Matt." Yeah, there's been because I've seen good people be marginalized too, and just at the local level.
Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah,
no, it's very like, it took a lot to even figure out how to get involved in the first place. Like, there's a learning curve just to getting involved in your state party, or especially, like, we were lucky that we actually had a county affiliate 'cause I see it all the time, like, people who will join, like, at the LP or there's a Facebook group called, like, New York Libertarian Discussion. People will say, "I wanna get involved, like, when's the next meeting?" So then we're like, "Oh, well, join your county party." sometimes they don't have an active county affiliate, and okay, maybe join our Discord, but yeah, it can be very hard to know where to even direct people so that they can get involved.
Well, I first got involved before I had email, so
Right, yeah.
it's,
How did people even do things like meetings before platforms like Zoom existed? Like, how did people even have their subcommittee meetings?
I think they probably traveled for them. I mean,
Yeah, I
this
mean,
was an era also, when, when you had the long distance phone call, it's
yeah,
I mean,
they did conference calls, but yeah, that,
but for example, for what I've heard, for example, people would show up at the national convention and they wouldn't know who was running for president until they showed up at the convention. So
oh, yeah.
that's one, I made the comment that we could probably get rid of the debates at LP National just for that reason alone, because by now, if the delegates care, they've probably watched a couple debates already.
I guess it depends. Like, yeah, New York, we were lucky that I think all but like all but maybe one or two of the candidates showed up to our state convention and did a debate there. But I know like that wasn't the case for some states. Some states had like maybe one or two, if that.
But there's a lot of things at LP National that we don't need anymore. We don't really need the debates, and we don't need those 10-minute advertisements for all the campaigns. Those could all go away.
I like the debates, but yeah,
But it
I don't.
takes up all this time from business that but yeah, I could the debates are good for C-SPAN too, so that's another factor.
Yeah.
But yeah, we certainly, we had a very unusual convention this year,
That's putting it mildly. I mean, well, one of the days was structured entirely around having an opposing party's candidate give a campaign stop there, which, yeah, I stood the test
RFK,
of it.
Donald Trump, yeah, Vivek was there. Rose, the other thing that too I observed about the Mises Caucus too, though, that when I have been so many times I've been at Libertarian Party things, and I often feel like I'm the kid there, and then I am with the Mises Caucus, and suddenly I was the old man. And I said, "This is" the Mises Caucus seems to have at least solved, what was a growing youth problem with the Libertarian Party, and I remember Brian Doherty writing about this in 2006 that, that he could tell that the LP was getting old, and
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, that was one of my complaints too. It felt like it had become just, well, it was often described as an elite social club run by a bunch of basically bureaucrats was one of the main complaints. So, yeah, I mean, it did need new people. It needed some new blood. So, in some ways, the Mises Caucus did provide some of that. Unfortunately, they sold out on pretty much every principle that prompted people like me to join it.
yeah, I know what you're saying, and unfortunately, I remember reading this article a few years ago about, science fiction conventions, and they were comparing Dragon Con, which is a business, and they
Mhm.
to World Con, which is a fan-run convention, and they pointed out that fan-run conventions tend to evolve into these little cliques where the people who have become more close knit, and it's harder and harder to get younger people in and getting new people in. And there's all and anytime there's a job to do, it's somebody like, well, he's already done the job. So the people that have experience get more experience, and the people that have no experience never get any experience. And that,
Right. Yeah. No, there are a lot of things that the Mises Caucus did right. Like
yeah.
when I first started getting involved in the LPNY, like Mises Caucus chapter were the ones that showed me how to run for state committee. Uh, yeah, they were. It was their idea to have me run for platform committee, which I'm glad I did it. That was fun. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot that they did right that I think other factions of the party could kind of take a few pages out of their book for.
Well, because I've noticed too that there's this, and maybe it's just because there are less of us, but from about maybe 1968 to about 1982, there's like people who are born in that range. They're not in the party. I don't,
Yeah.
so many of the people that were part of the old guard over were 60 plus. I mean, and then you had people, the Mises Caucus, most of them were under 40, and it's just I
Right.
was realizing that this is their that the Mises Caucus definitely exposed some issues that I don't think people were willing to deal with, and
My biggest issue was like, well, as what Konkin terms the coctopus. Um, there was a serious problem with certain special interest groups, the Koch Foundation being the most well known, basically getting involved in the party, like funding certain outlets, such as Cato Institute, Reason Magazine, and kind of influencing the direction they would take and pushing a very watered down version of libertarianism. Things like they would okay, like they get a lot right. Like they'll speak out against police brutality or the drug war, but like they'll push for deregulation of certain industries when it benefits them, but they won't go all the way and be like hardline anti-central banking, anti-state backed corporation. Um, So it kinda yeah, they're pushing a very neutered version of libertarianism. So that was yeah, that there were some parts of the party that needed to go, that and then so then when the Mises Caucus won and there was like a mass exodus of some of the big name donors, because originally one of the criticisms was, "Oh, look at all this donation money, it's way down." I'm like, "But that was expected. We knew some of these big donors were gonna pull out because, yeah, because they're no longer pushing that super, uh, watered down establishment friendly version of libertarianism." So I didn't think that was a cause for concern at first.
well, I watched, there was I I I've hardly said his name here, but I just call him the doctor in Washington, the state of Washington, and he was somebody I met at 2000 in 2017 or 18. And actually, it was a health freedom event where he was talking about, people doing medical tourism, stuff like that, and he was all about, he was going to write a book about what he called the white coat cartels. He was going to talk about how corrupt medicine was because of government. He said he got into the Libertarian Party because of Harry Brown. And early 2020, he completely went, all in on the entire narrative for coronavirus. He was criticizing people for having rallies, and I just, I don't I mean, I felt like I was watching Anakin turn into Darth Vader.
Uh-huh.
And
It was a major litmus test for a lot
and
of us.
and I just couldn't believe this, and I was just so and, I was kind of in this place where I said, "Stand by your friend, no matter what,"
Mhm.
and I was just trying to say things, and I just
It is so hard watching
and
someone fall for a, like, mass panic.
I think he was at the point where he was giving about $100,000 a year to the LP, and not to mention he was also spending a lot of time going down to Colombia to do volunteer medical care for Venezuelans.
Wow.
Uh, he was he was helping he was paying for people to go to conferences, and he also has apparently helped about 50 people get out of Venezuela. I mean, I think that is amazing work. I think it's wonderful, and he gives them a place to live for a while, and I guess even gives them, kind of maybe a $1,000 car, so they got a car. It's
Wow.
not a great car, but he gives them something so they can get started in America and become Americans.
Yeah, it's so disappointing when someone you greatly respect falls for something like that. Like, normally, I can overlook a lot with people, like, I'm like, "Okay, maybe you
Yeah.
have some cringy views on some things, but actions speak more loudly than words." Like, I have friends who, in some cases, who are like outright communists, but like they'll be like consistently anti-war. Like they'll take money out of their own pocket to help friends who are in need, and I'm like, okay, I guess I can overlook some of your views if you can agree on certain like negotiable principles.
Yes, well, yeah, if that, it's just like if some mediocre basketball player misses the big shot, you don't feel that bad.
Right.
But if somebody like Michael Jordan or Steph Curry misses the big shot, then you're really let down. "Oh, Michael, you let us down."
Right. Yeah,
Th
because
th
you
that
high
Being great, there's a lot of responsibility with being great, and sometimes hard, and I think we have a problem is that we don't the culture of the party has gotten so negative that don't even realize what some of the good things that people are doing,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we certainly talk about all their mistakes, and I hope we can figure out a way to recognize those things, but, uh,
Right. Yeah, because 'cause I'm, like, one of the first ones to say, "Okay, let maybe we need to avoid purity spiraling too hard." As long as we can, like, okay, on the one hand, there need to be certain principles that we agree we're going to promote and not negotiate on. However, like, at the same time, yeah, the infighting gets ridiculous, like, disagreeing over some minor little detail, like, okay, people, we are living under an increasingly tyrannical uh, state, and we're busy fighting over stupid hypotheticals, like, yeah, let's back to the real world, please.
yeah, well, I don't know, especially among among the left, there is so much of a focus on more trivial things. I mean, I see more people on the left, complain about the fact that Trump wore a blue suit to the funeral of the Pope. Oh, I said, "I don't care. I care more about the guy's policies. I care
I
about
know.
what his executive orders." And that element has entered the Libertarian Party in some respects on both sides. It's like the more serious the issue is, the less we talk about it, and the less it's serious. There's inversely proportional to how, and I've seen this in the LP too. And I've got to say, the Mises Caucus has not really been immune from it. And
Oh, no. Like, I originally another one of my biggest complaints about the Libertarian Party was it felt like they were focusing too much on culture war stuff, like, and at the time, I'm like, "Okay, we don't I think we all agree, yeah, we should have things like marriage equality. I mean, the state should not be involved in the first place, but we support the right for same-sex couples to get married and defend their marijuana farms with automatic weapons." Like, I'm like, "We don't need to virtue signal about it constantly." Now, I've kinda changed my tune on that because I think that without the occasional message saying, "This is what we support," you do attract some people who think they're gonna have a home in our party, and then it turns out they have views on social issues that are incompatible with our principles. However, like, yeah, I thought that the party was wasting too much time on culture war issues, and we should be focusing on things like imperialism and central banking. So, yeah, that was part of why I got involved. And then once the Mises Caucus won in Reno, like, all of a sudden they start focusing on culture war issues, but in the opposite direction. Like, yeah, rather than being too woke, they made this. Like, I'm just gonna say, like, being obnoxiously performatively anti woke is just as obnoxious as being performatively woke. So they basically just went too far in the other direction.
well, I think the party needs to focus. You always, it's very easy to lose sight of what you're for and get focused on what you're against.
Right. And
You have to keep
oh, go
your
ahead.
eye on what you're for.
Right, and culture war issues are one of those things that it is so easy to get distracted by them because you feel like you can actually accomplish something. Like, it's depressing when you think, okay, I'm opposed to the warfare state, but what can I, as one person, actually do? We feel powerless. But if you can get that person who said something offensive on Twitter canceled, you feel like you actually did something. And that's why the culture war is so appealing to so many people.
Yeah, and there were people, I think, doing it on both sides. I mean, there's
Oh,
so
yeah.
much culture. There was so much a culture of name calling on the left, especially before Reno. I mean, I wish people had. I mean, one guy here in Travis County, Ted Brown, who apparently recruited Angela into the party in the first place, Angela McCardle. Uh, he said he put out this note on Facebook. He said, I recruited Angela into the party, and I don't believe she has enough experience to do this job. And
Mm.
this was a calm, level-headed commentary. And if there had been more criticisms of Angela like that, maybe I would have ended up supporting Tony DeRazzo or even Dazbach.
Oh,
But
right.
nobody said anything like that. They just constantly screamed racist or whatever.
Yeah.
And everybody in the party got sick and tired of that, and it didn't do any good. And
I've tried to have this conversation with people. I'm like, okay, like, they're like, "We warned you about what the Mises Caucus was." No, I'm like, "No, you just stood there screaming Nazi at people, and then you're wondering why we don't take you seriously? Like, sorry, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and, it didn't help. You weren't around in 2016, but I think one of the worst
like,
PR disasters,
I voted for Johnson, but I wasn't
okay?
involved."
But one of the worst public relations disasters for the Libertarian Party was James Weeks at the 2016 convention.
Oh, yeah.
And, I was also kind of thinking, I said, well, when the arena reset happened, I said, I was thinking maybe we can finally get rid of people like this
Yes, I
because
agree,
they've been around for so long
yeah.
that just, yeah.
They're the reason people don't take us seriously. Like, I realize, like, Berman Supreme, I think he seems like a cool guy, like, in person. I know he does, actual activism and stuff, but, like, as an actual presidential candidate, I'm like, "Are you crazy? This is who you" like, people are not gonna understand the joke and the fact that he's supposed to be a parody of a politician. They're gonna take one look at the candidate, they're gonna instantly dismiss us, and then when you tell people you're a libertarian, they're gonna be like, "What, like that guy who runs around with a boot on his head?" Like, yeah, okay? People need to understand how to do actual messaging to the general public.
Well, yeah, I think the thing that got me about the Vermin supporters is there was always this argument from them that he's famous. And I'm like, well, I've never heard of him.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So
no one
you're
knows who
telling me that he's famous and yet I've never heard of him.
he's famous in certain, yeah, little,
We had Lincoln Chafee running for president in 2020. I had heard of him,
mhm.
yeah, because he'd been and and they kept telling, and there was this there was this amazing lack of self-awareness as to real thinking. It's like, I may like a song a lot, but that doesn't mean it's number one. I'd like it to be number one, but there's so much of this attitude of just wishing makes it so, or believing that. I talk to comedians and people who do comedy for a living, and they'd never heard of Lemon Supreme. It's like, this guy isn't famous.
Right, no, he's famous in certain activist circles,
Yeah,
and again, I can respect
and maybe he's got
real
some regional
activism,
fame also, but yeah,
but yeah, but some
yeah.
people are best suited to doing local activism or on the ground activism. Other people are more suited to doing actual messaging and running as a national candidate. Okay. People have their strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, there are times when, yeah, having a guy run around with a boot on his head and parody politicians is a good idea, but time and place. So yeah, that was part of the reason why I also wanted the Mises Caucus to win. I'm like, we need a serious, unapologetically libertarian candidate, but one who also knows how to properly sell our ideas to the public. That's another complaint of mine. Like, we'll have
Well,
these great ideas, but we don't know how to make them normie friendly.
and to their credit, the Mises Caucus also had this attitude that they approached the convention kind of like almost like, it was an army operation. Get up in the morning, get up on time,
Uh-huh.
show up on time. There was not that attitude. There's not, you're not here to get drunk. You're here to do a convention. And believe me, I'd estimate 20 or 25% of the people who go to LP conventions just go there to get drunk.
I mean, that's part of the appeal, getting to hang out and drink with libertarian friends, but yes, you are
Yeah,
there to do a job. And yeah,
yeah,
they operated with a degree of, organization that most factions of the party can't.
yeah. A degree
It's
of
why
seriousness.
there are so many rumors still, I still deal with them, that, "Oh, they had to have been paid because" I mean, yeah, for all in as far as I know, because I know people who like, I constantly hear, "Oh, the Mises Caucus was funded by dark money, and they were paying people to show up at state conventions." Like, I know some of the people who did things like show up at the Pennsylvania convention. No, like, they all carpooled, they split Airbnbs with, like, 4 other people. Like, as far as I could tell, the people involved did so because they wanted to, because they actually believed in the mission that the Mises Caucus claimed to have. Okay, I don't know of anyone who got paid to do something. So I get that the idea that they were driven by actual by being true believers is not as exciting as the idea that they were funded by dark money and sent solely to destroy the party. But yeah,
There
people
were
are having a
different
hard
people.
time understanding. No, they were true believers, but that's not a bad thing. Like, if they can, yeah, trigger the same impulse in people to want to change the party and to genuinely believe in it, they can, yeah, they can do their own version of the Mises takeover.
Yeah, and they were also, they got me somebody to share a room with in 2022. I shared a room with I shared a room with a Travis County person in 2024, so that was easy enough. Just found him on my own, but, it was really cool just how it worked out, but it was I never, and so many people previously before that, there was this attitude, well, like, it's only, it doesn't matter how expensive it is. Sometimes I wonder if they were trying to price people out because I've been highly critical just of the fact that they picked, you know, and this was probably in 2021 or 2020, the people who picked DC as a
Yeah,
convention 2024. It's like, this is and and apparently they came out about $100,000 ahead on Reno. I mean, they actually made
yeah.
money, and it's like, and now you've
Now they're how much debt are they in?
I don't know,
They've gotten the
you
credit
took
card debt.
you picked a site that you knew was expensive and
Mhm.
you didn't care. It's just so
Well, they thought they could make up they thought they could make up for it by attracting lots of people. I mean, the whole way they sold the Trump appearance is that, "Oh, this is gonna bring publicity and it's
well
gonna bring money."
well, I don't think the people who picked the DC as a convention site ever dreamed Trump would be there. I mean, this was in
Right, that was not the
2021 or
plan.
so.
That yeah, that was before the Mises takeover, so they're not responsible for that one. No, they thought that, like, by having it right smack dab in DC, politicians and news media would be forced to pay attention to it.
Yeah, well, they thought I think they thought a MASH would be the nominee and everything. That's the excuse I hear, but, the only issue with Reno is, I know some people had double plane changes on the way to Reno, which, you wanna make it easy for people to get there, and if people have to change planes twice, that's maybe a little harder than you want it to be, but
Right.
that's the only Reno is pretty
Yeah,
cheap.
I
I like Reno for a lot of reasons. Yeah, it's actually hard to find a convention site. I mean, Grand Rapids looks like a pretty good site, but, again, that might not be that easy for some people on the West Coast, so, but
Yeah, I mean, that's at least within I wouldn't say easy driving distance, but it is doable. So yeah,
yeah, it's
I don't fly, so I at least can drive there.
oh, you don't fly, that's interesting.
I yeah, hate planes.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, there were some things they did well, yeah. When did you so you started becoming disillusioned right after Reno, is that what happened, or
I wouldn't say right after. No, I mean, unfortunately I was yeah, not in a position to travel all the way across the country for Reno, but like I had friends who were there, so I was kind of watching and talking with them on social media. Like I was so excited. And for a while, yeah, like we had very high hopes, but I would say maybe around 2023, I started to get disillusioned. I don't know if that would be the word, but I was getting increasingly concerned with some of the messaging because, like I kind of mentioned earlier, like was I saw them focusing more and more on the culture war stuff and less on the principles that they claimed they were going to be pushing. And another thing, like I also joined because of the decentralized revolution idea. And the number of local candidates getting elected into office as libertarians was declining, even though they said that that was what they were going to focus on the hardest. So, yeah, yeah, I had been growing increasingly concerned about the direction that the Mises Caucus was taking. And also, I saw over time, like, a lot of people that I joined who were principled libertarians were disappearing. For example, in New York, even. I think around the 2022 to 2023 era, we had maybe roughly a third of the state committee was Mises Caucus. So many of these people just kind of vanished. Like we had a nice little social group, and like we would even do like local get-togethers where we'd all meet up and discuss libertarian philosophy over drinks. We'd be like, bring whatever liberty curious friends you have. We'd encourage them to get involved. Then over time, that just kind of fizzled out. People stopped showing up and people who had joined state committees stopped showing up to the meetings, which, yeah, don't do that because then, yeah, you have a hard time making quorum because the number of people required increases and then people don't show up and then you can't make quorum. So, yeah, if you're
yes.
going to join state committee, okay, take your commitment seriously, people. But yeah, the energy kind of disappeared. Like,
My honeymoon ended when when with the Mark Victor fiasco in Arizona.
oh, yeah.
That was, I mean, this was a guy who went out and and sued the state of Hawaii to get rid of mask mandates. And I said, I supported the Mises Caucus because of this, because they stood against the coronavirus stuff. And now we have one of the few people who fought the battles, and you're not, and you're stabbing in the back. And
Yeah.
the really sad part about all that too was now looking ahead, if they just supported him, he might have actually been a really good presidential candidate.
It was all for nothing too, right? Because
Yeah,
yeah, the Democrat won anyway.
yeah, the Democrat won anyway, and, it's, people
Right.
from outside of Arizona saying about this and, 'cause I have to admit I was already I didn't I hadn't really officially said I'm quitting, but I was already saying, "Okay, this I don't think this is gonna work. Maybe Angela will work out, but there are other people at
No,
play
I
here."
I supported her. Like, oh, another thing I supported, like, I really did support the single issue coalitions. Like, I was a
Yes.
big believer in the Rage Against the War machine, when the first one was held. Like, I'm like, okay, I really, I greatly endorse the idea of working with anyone else who's anti-war. Like, I thought a lot of, okay, maybe there were some valid criticisms. I think a lot of the criticisms were overblown. Like, I'm like people, and it just came across as people looking to find fault with anything they could. I'm like, okay, there were a few uh, maybe, I don't know, bad calls as far as certain people showing up, but I'm like, I think she is trying to do the right thing here. Um, and yeah, ultimately, I support an anti-war rally, working with anyone else who is on board with being anti-imperialist. Like that was another one of the main reasons I supported the Mises Caucus.
Yeah, the thing that kinda worried me too, and during Angela's tenure, though, was for whatever reason, they weren't able to keep the people that they'd hired, which never looks good. Uh,
That's another thing that kind of plays into what I was saying earlier. Like
and I don't know if they fired them or if they quit, but, it was high turnover just never looks good.
a lot of people were just kind of disappearing. Like I was saying, like maybe in some ways, yeah, people were having fun when the goal was to take over the party, but then it was kind of like the dog that actually caught the car. They're like, "What now? Oh, now we have to do actual work." And then they get elected to like their state executive committee, and they have to actually do things. And
Yeah,
yeah,
well, I
and
mean,
then they got bored and didn't, and then, or rather, they joined and they got the party, and then nothing really happened to their satisfaction, and they lost interest. At least that was the impression I got in New York when people just disappeared and stopped showing up.
mm, well, I'm thinking Lainey Houston, Reed Cooley, and Luke Truxell were all people who were in and out after the Mises Caucus took over things. I mean, they were
Right.
and that none of these people lasted that long. And if you wanna have a successful organization, you wanna have people who join and stick around. You don't wanna have people constantly going in and out the door because you just lose all that knowledge and all the continuity. High turnover is very costly to any organization,
Right,
and
and
so
I think in their yeah, like, I think there was a lot of arrogance too, like, the Mises Caucus, or a lot of people running it thought they could do a better job than people who were actually running the party, but they also drove out people who actually knew what they were doing and had a lot to offer, but got driven out because of some of the tactics they were seeing, or, like, some people were genuinely, like, badly mistreated and left for that reason. There was a lot that I feel like I wasn't aware of because in New York, like, we New York didn't have the caucus wars that other states had, so, yeah, there was a lot that I did not know, like, I was not aware of how bad things were in other states where the Mises Caucus took over that state and actually bullied people out of the party, so I only became aware of this later on.
I've heard some stories about people leaving. Yes, some people said, "Well, I quit." So it's like, you're it's like you're ahead at the end of the 3rd quarter, but the losing team is coming back is making gains. So now you're gonna quit and let them win instead of finish them off. I just don't it's that's so weird. It's these people just got up and left even though and just kind of let the Mises Caucus win by default. I don't get it.
Yeah, people got demoralized, I think, and
There's never been a war here, and they never took over Texas, and I have my theories on this, but
well, Texas, yeah, they have a very strong party, and, yeah, they seem relatively takeover proof. New York is too, because New York has actually dealt with, takeover attempts by mostly by New York Republicans who were pissed about us stealing votes. So they've tried to infiltrate and destroy the New York Libertarian Party before, so as a result, we have bylaws that render us very hard to take over.
Yeah, Rose, I think I can tell you what that's about. What caused that?
In New York?
Yes,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm aware of some of the, yeah, pre-dates stuff.
1994.
Oh, wow, that's going back very far then.
Well, largely because Howard Stern packed a convention and got the nomination for governor.
Mm,
That's what I'm betting. That's when that comes from. He packed a convention and got the nomination for governor, and then he found out he had to fill out financial disclosure forms and dropped out. And so I think New York wants to prevent another Howard Stern situation.
right, and then there were, yeah, a couple other, yeah, major events that caused, bylaws changes, so,
Yeah,
yeah, this is not our first rodeo, like, we're
yeah.
fairly immune to takeover, and it seems like Texas is similar, like, it seems like it's very hard to actually take over the Texas party.
Well, I don't know everything that goes on in New York, but that was something that that was something that everybody around the country noticed happen because Howard Stern was in the news a lot, and he might not have been that bad a candidate, but he's went well. Different states have different ways of doing things. When I lived in Ohio, for example, if you were a member of the party and showed up at the convention, the state convention, you were a delegate.
Okay.
So if they had 10 people from Cleveland and 100 people from Cincinnati, that's just the way it goes. But, Texas, has this system of county affiliates, and you become a delegate from the county, and then
Okay.
things like
Interesting.
that.
Yeah.
I've got another theory though too, and, when we talked about Vermin Supreme and how all these people, overestimate Vermin's influence, the people in the Mises Caucus greatly overestimate Ron Paul's influence.
Yeah, I mean, okay. He okay. I mean, I'll always have a soft spot for Ron Paul because, yeah, when I was coming back out of my, Obama Democrat phase because I, yeah, realized,
Yes.
"Oh, no, I was right the first time to be opposed to the state." Like, he's the one that kinda got me started down the rabbit hole of learning economics, and then from there, like, I ultimately got to be reading people like Mises and Rothbard. So, yeah, I have a lot of respect for Ron Paul. I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he pointed a lot of people in the right direction.
I didn't say he did, but
Right.
I'm talking about his overall influence. I
You
mean,
don't think he got that many people
well,
in
for example, in 2022, we had our governor's elections, and like many other states, we had a governor running for re-election in spite of the fact that he had completely shut down the state for no reason. And Ron Paul endorsed this guy named Don Huffines in the primary, and running against Greg Abbott, the incumbent governor. And Don Huffines got less than 12% of the vote in the primary. The
Okay.
the whole point is people who like Ron Paul care about Ron Paul, but 80% of the Republican Party doesn't give a shit about Ron Paul.
Right. Or
Yeah,
they'll agree with him
right.
until they don't. Like, they'll agree with him when it's convenient, but yeah, I
Yeah.
greatly appreciate what he did at getting certain ideas to be mainstream, like getting up on stage and speaking out against the wars at a time when that was very unpopular, when he knew he was gonna get booed, or speaking out against the drug war knowing he was gonna get booed. So, yeah, he did help by joining one of the major parties, which gave him a platform to spread these ideas, but yeah, no, you may be right.
I'm just saying it's yeah, he just did it in a different venue, and it does raise the question of maybe you're better off trying to influence the red team, but I really don't know. But
I think there's a place for it.
my whole point is he's never. I mean, if you create a parallel timeline and he's never born, there's nothing really that different about the country. He influenced people who like him, but just the same way that Vermin Supreme influences people who like him. But
Well, I mean, okay. I think Ron Paul's a lot more known, so I'm wondering, yeah, you don't think he had a significant influence on the number of people who got into libertarianism? I think he's held in high regard by the Mises Caucus
yeah,
because of timing. Because
there would be less people involved. There might be less people involved in libertarianism, but
okay.
our movement would still is irrelevant either way.
Well, like you pointed out, though, because a lot of the Mises Caucus people are in their 30s for the most part. Like, a
Yeah,
lot of them
that
were having their political awakenings at the time when Ron Paul was running his first campaign in 2008 or well, during his 2008 campaign anyway. So I think he was the one that introduced those ideas to a lot of the people who ultimately became members of the Mises Caucus, and I guess that's probably why he's so significant to them.
And I'm not, and I don't, anybody who's influenced Ron Paul, I acknowledge your existence. I also acknowledge that he is completely irrelevant to the history of America. I think 50 years from now, nobody will care about him.
Yeah, it's possible.
Because, there have been other Republicans like him that were in Congress that and
Yeah.
nobody knows who they were. I mean, certainly doesn't have even close to the influence of Milei, although, yeah, it's just but yeah, so I think sometimes they're just trying to figure out a way to make Ron Paul relevant because they were hoping, "Oh, Donald Trump will talk to Ron Paul,
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Elon will talk to Ron Paul, Vivek will talk to Ron Paul," and they haven't talked to him at all. He's just they don't care.
I've had this argument with people.
Yeah,
Elon retweeted Ron Paul. Okay, and, like, you know that if people even if people actually are anti-Federal Reserve, okay, the statists are anti-Federal Reserve for all the wrong reasons. They don't wanna end central banking, they want to replace it with their own version of a centralized currency, okay?
yeah,
Be very careful of the people who are advocating ideas that sound good, but may not be doing so for the same reasons you are. I
yeah,
could rant about that for hours.
certainly, and what was I going to say? Yeah, it's certainly yeah. There's a lot there. I don't know. I've never really believed. I guess I've gotten more cynical about people, but I don't think there are that
Yeah.
many sincere friends of freedom out there. It's certainly
Unfortunately not. You hear this a lot. "Oh, everyone's a libertarian, they just don't know it." Unfortunately, no, I think most people are statists, and there are a lot of people who like our ideas, as long as it's something that they agree with, like, they're all for liberty if it's behavior that they personally approve of, but then they're all for having a state stop people if it's something they personally disapprove of.
yeah.
So, most people are statists, that's why I believe in networking and forming, um networks of
Well,
like-minded people at the local level who you can work with, and yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I don't because one of the things I constantly hear from in the Mises Caucus is we want to quote restart the Ron Paul revolution, which never really was a revolution to begin with. So I just so that seems like because this was the ultimate reason for this was the main justification for why I hate Chase Oliver
Mm.
because he doesn't worship Ron Paul.
Well, I mean, he did yeah, and he wasn't actually
Yeah,
anti-Ron Paul, like, he made that statement that people place a lot of emphasis on, I think he kinda walked that back, like, no, I mean,
yeah.
I like Chase Oliver, I think he's a good guy,
Well,
and a
and
lot of people who I disagree on some things, a lot of people who didn't like him, like, yeah, they didn't really have real reasons, it was always vague shit like, "Oh, he's too woke," or, "Yeah, he's" yeah.
well, yeah, there's certainly been screenshots of that tweet. That's from a Twitter account that no longer exists, and I wish there was a way to look up the archives on it to see if what the context was and see if it was,
Right,
it's what exactly it meant. But it's like I don't the Libertarian Party. If somebody's in the Libertarian Party and they hate one or two gurus, I may wonder why they don't. But that doesn't mean you're not. That doesn't mean you're denied membership in the party. But apparently, for the Mises Caucus, you have to think Ron Paul is God, or you can't be in the party. And I don't.
right,
I
yeah.
don't want that for Ayn Rand. I don't want that for Ludwig von Mises. I don't want that for Hayek. I don't want that for anybody.
Yeah, I generally advise against hero worship. Okay, there are a lot of people who, like, I hold in fairly high regard, but they're ultimately all flawed. Like, most people,
Yes.
they have lots of good ideas. Most of them also had lots of very bad ideas. Okay, we need to be able to take the good ideas they had, but also say, okay, but they got this, this, and this wrong. Like, no one should be viewed as infallible.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking back in 2012 that if I'd had Ron Paul and Gary Johnson running for governor, I would have voted for Gary Johnson. But if I'd had Ron Paul and Gary Johnson running for president, I would have voted for Ron Paul.
Yeah, I think I can kind of understand why that might be. Yeah,
Exactly. And most of the Ron Paul people I knew back then, at least, were pretty much pro Johnson. They when we get together and watch debates, and they'd clap for Johnson when he was introduced. But he got screwed. Yeah, and that was a dumb move too, though. I don't know why Gary Johnson ran for president that year because, the Senate seat in New Mexico was open that year. I mean, he coulda jumped into that race as a Republican and possibly gotten it, so,
Yeah, he probably could have won.
because he was po yeah, he got really high vote totals in New Mexico in both elections because he was definitely I think he might have gotten the best I mean, that might have been the highest percentage of any state he got because he was known there and they liked him. It was a
Yeah, no, from what I understand, like, he did a perfectly fine job as a
yeah,
governor.
I never had a problem with Gary Johnson. I can understand why people had a problem with Weld, but I don't
Yeah, I mean, no, Johnson wasn't bad, like, I guess he was not great at messaging, so, he was one of those people who, like, I'll cite as part of the reason why I joined because I found the messaging that he was doing disappointing, and yeah, Weld was definitely a disappointment, like, yeah, he's frequently cited as a reason why, "Oh, I joined because I didn't want any more Weld type
yeah.
candidates." So, yeah, I'm sympathetic to that position because.
But he was also a successful businessman and a guy who, so people saw him as a guy who could get things done.
Mhm.
I think that helps a lot. I We need more people like that. We don't we need people who are really who are winners in life and know how to be winners so they know how to be winners in elections. The worst thing is the way the culture is in the party now. I don't know what we're going to attract in 2028. I think I think good people. I don't know what's in Spike's head, but I think that's why Spike's not getting involved. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, he's doing kinda his own thing with his organization.
certainly that way with the mash. Uh,
Yeah, everyone hoped he'd step up as chair, but that didn't happen. He kinda toyed with the idea, but I guess decided, "I'm not getting involved in this." I don't blame him.
I don't know. I don't know if I think if anybody to be chair right now, I would want somebody who knows how to take an organization that's in bad shape and get it back into good shape.
Right.
What experience does Justin Amash have running a nonprofit? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I get
again,
it.
that's another place of putting a good person in the wrong job, possibly.
Right. And I think I could definitely get behind him as a presidential candidate. I think he'd do an
Yeah.
okay job at that.
And I would certainly love to see somebody like John Mons run again, or uh, if Lars Mapstead would just drop the national sales tax, I could get behind him easily. Uh,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't dislike him either. Like,
yeah,
his idea of the, Stop 270, like, it was a good idea
yeah,
if you actually are going with the idea that our electoral system works as
mhm,
advertised.
yeah,
But I feel like I'm like, "Okay, 1, it's not gonna be allowed to happen even if it technically has the votes to happen, and 2, the idea was that it was gonna draw attention to our party, but in actuality, I think it would just piss everyone off because all the major, like, corporate news media would be like, "Hey, you know why we haven't announced our presidential winner yet? Because of this annoying third party that's holding
yeah,
up the vote." And then they'd get
yeah.
everybody behind the idea of just eliminating third parties entirely. I'm like, I think this is gonna backfire if it was actually allowed to happen in the first place. Wish it won't be. But the idea on the surface wasn't terrible because there was an actual, like, plan there rather than some vague, "Oh, I'm gonna be the nominee to, I don't know, spread messages or whatever." So if he had an actual goal, I just don't think it would have worked.
Yeah, yeah. Lars seemed like a really nice guy, and
Yeah.
again, a successful businessman. I guess it's when you've been around the liberty movement as long as I have. There are some conversations that I'm just sick and tired of having, and the discussion about the national sales tax is one of those discussions. I just want somebody to I just want this idea to die, and it never goes away. It's
What, to eliminate income tax and replace it with sales tax?
yes,
Yeah, no, it's stupid.
yeah, well, I'm opposed to it because of there's a very likely chance that we'll end up stuck with both, and
Precisely, it's like the
yeah,
tariffs thing. "Oh, Trump is gonna get rid of the income tax and replace it with tariffs." No, you idiots. He's gonna add tariffs, and you're still gonna have a
yeah,
third of your income stolen every 2 weeks.
and the national sales tax people have been around. There's just got to be there's got to be somebody who's funding this and just keeps funding it and just because it won't go away. It's
The
you
Cokes?
know
Maybe? I don't know.
I don't know.
Or people just copy
I
each
wish
other 'cause
I wish we could get more people to get behind star voting and leave ranked choice voting too. But
yeah.
so that was where I am. You know uh, you were at 2024, so that was a very eventful convention. Yes,
Oh, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
it had its moments. I've come from a unique position of both times I was the 19th alternate from Texas, which is sometimes I sat, sometimes I didn't sit.
Oh, wait, so wait, at the most recent one, you were not a were you an alt or a delegate?
I was the 19th alternate both times, but,
Oh, wow.
so many people don't show up. That's
Wow.
I was there voting all day on Sunday, and that was the long day. Uh,
Oh, yeah, the day that oh, man, what a waste, like, yeah, there
I
were like, they wasted how much food because that gala was supposed
that was so
I
sad.
just
That
remember
was
being so
unfortunate, yeah.
annoyed that they didn't let us have because I remember I was starving because no one had had dinner, and,
It
I'm like,
was
"Why can't they let us have that food that they're wasting? Because the gala's not happening."
that was yeah, it was a very I mean, we had to do what we had to do. It was but after the convention, the first thing I said to people, I said, "I want a new bylaw that 2/3 of vote is required for an adjournment."
Yeah.
Because we adjourned early on Friday and Saturday for no reason whatsoever,
Oh,
which is
yeah,
why we were
after
doing so
Friday
which
was
was why we
wasted.
were there so long on Sunday.
Friday was completely wasted with the stupid delegate fight, like, which
Yeah.
I mean, this was one of the main areas where I completely stopped, like, where like, I started really questioning whether I wanted to keep supporting the Mises Caucus, and, I'm not the only one, like, I actually overheard several conversations by people on the floor saying, I joined the Mises Caucus because this, and this, but this is not what I signed up for. Like, I don't think the leadership fully understood just how many people they alienated with that stupid delegate battle. And they also didn't really sell it to us. Like, they didn't really give us the full backstory and say, okay, this is the story. Like, this is the side that the people who think they should be
Mhm.
defeated, like, "This is their story. Here's what we think." Like, they just told us, "No, just vote no," and then
Yes.
bragged about how hard everyone was gonna read, which was just off-putting. Like, I'm like, I so it just yeah, I voted against them on that because it
Mhm.
just seemed like the right thing to do to seat them. Yeah,
I
glad I
wonder
did.
I wonder too how easy it would have been for the Mises Caucus to keep things coordinated because you got people out there with phones and laptops that might be running out of power. Nobody had any place to plug anything in. So people might have lost contact with the Mises Caucus Discord, and they might not have known what the Mises Caucus was pushing for.
I mean, they had people with signs. The Mises Caucus themselves kept like 'cause when they did the convention postmortem, they kept saying, "Oh, maybe we just didn't get our whip announcements out to people well enough." I don't buy that. I think people voted against them because they kind of were banking on the idea that people were going to mindlessly vote
Yeah.
as we're told. And sorry, but not all of
Well,
us operated that way.
well, the delegate fights didn't help, but then, and Art DaBianca, who is from my county, and it's like, and when he moves to adjourn on Friday, it's like, and I went to her, why did you do that?
Uh huh.
There's so much more stuff we need to get done. And
Yeah, I was so pissed that we didn't get to platform and bylaws.
and and if I'm still here in 2026 and the delegate votes comes up for 2026, guess who's not getting my vote to be a delegate at our state convention or our national convention if I'm still here? Art is not getting it. Simply stupid adjournment. Uh,
Understandable.
yeah, that's
What
which
do
is
you
why
think of the
which is why
idea
I
that
say make it 2/3.
I
Two
think it
two
was a Star Child who proposed the idea that, like, if you motion to adjourn and it fails, you get removed. What do you think of that?
I absolutely love that idea, and that's what
Me
I've
too.
said as well. Because I've realized that most adjournments are called for basically to sabotage business.
Right, because somebody doesn't want something voted on or it's
Yeah,
not what they wanted and then they wanna split before anything else happens. Yeah,
or 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 they just wanna go get drunk, and I've seen that happen too.
it's like, just you have an alt then, okay? Go get drunk on your own time and appoint your alt. Like, yeah,
Or
why do
just get up and leave.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing I noticed in the presidential vote. We lost, I think from the first round of the presidential vote to the last round of the presidential voting, I think we lost about 100 delegates.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, people were tired.
And the other thing too, I would propose after LP National is anybody with less than the rule right now is anybody with less than 5% is out. Raise that to 10%.
Right, yeah, I'd be okay with that because
I
Otherwise, yeah, there are endless rounds. And another thing though that we
I
all fell for because everyone was exhausted, the at-large voting. Like they decided to do like the top 5 thing where people who had the simple majority would win. That's how the Mises Caucus got pretty much
yes,
all the at-large positions.
and
People felt I didn't, because I'm pretty sure I did vote yes on that because I didn't really think hard about it at the time. I'm like, "Oh, well, 1, I was still Mises at the time, and 2,
mhm,
I'm like, "That makes sense. Why have to go through endless rounds of voting?"
but
Yeah,
that was
I
another
know not to do that ever again now.
really, that's kinda one thing I can't necessarily forgive Joshua Smith and Jacob Hornberger for because we wasted 2 hours to eliminate them from the presidential ballot,
Yeah,
and if they had just said after the 1st round, I'm dropping out," that would've been great, but
yeah.
their egos were too important, so they stayed in. We had 1 round of voting to eliminate Jacob, 1 round of voting to eliminate Joshua, and every round of voting takes about an hour. That's a lot of time. It would've, I don't know if you heard any internal communications. Was there any talk about making deals or
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Termott, I mean, Lars,
Oh, that was a shit show.
Wall,
Yeah.
Chase.
Well, okay, first of all, there was a meeting that certain high-level Mises Caucus people were in several nights previously, prior to the convention officially starting, where Termott did say that, okay, if it comes down to me, Chase, Oliver, and Michael Rectenwald, okay, I'm probably not going to have the votes to give you, but if I will endorse Michael Rectenwald as VP if the Mises Caucus votes for me. Well, that all fell apart on the actual night of the voting because they didn't want to make that deal. Instead, the Mises leadership decided, um, no, we want to, yeah, follow this through the end and try to get Michael Rectenwald to be the nominee. So then they decided they were going to try to negotiate a deal with Mike Dermott and have him agree to be the VP candidate. Okay, well, Chase Oliver also apparently negotiated with him and gave him a better deal because he decided to go with Chase Oliver. And then, yeah, I mean, they gambled and they lost. And then, yeah,
I wondered
it
if
was not, that was not taken well, as I'm sure you can recall.
oh, Heisey screamed Michael Heise screamed the leader of the Miskuk screamed out to everybody. He was so mad. I wonder if
I
the
can
gummy had
remember him raging on the caucus Discord for, yeah, and people have been like, "Dude, just chill." Mm,
I wonder if the gummy had something to do with that, uh, that eventually maybe tipped Termott's hand.
very possibly.
I just yeah, I don't know what was in Termott's head. I was actually supporting Termott just because I knew that if Rechtenwald or Chase got the nomination, we'd probably have a situation like we ended up having.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe Termott could get everybody to work together, or that's why I was really hoping Spike would run, but he didn't run. And Amash could have gotten people to work together, but there was hardly anybody that could have brought the party together. And the way people and then we had the no to 300 where it came down to Chase versus none of the above, and 300 people were willing to just completely. Uh,
Oh, and I can confirm that was not planned in advance either. Um, yeah, they had not, like, there was, yeah, no one had said, "Okay, if it comes down to someone that the Mises Caucus doesn't like, we're all gonna vote none of the above." Like, that was a last minute thing. And a lot of people at the time, they're like, "What's gonna happen if no one actually wins?" Like, people didn't
yeah,
know what that meant. We are gonna have no candidate whatsoever. A lot of people were genuinely concerned about their ballot access because, again, it was very unclear. Like, can we nominate someone else? Like, there was, yeah, a lot of debate about that. It was not clearly answered. So a lot of us just kind of saw that as the, yeah, childish take our toys and go home tantrum that it was. So I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna vote no to okay. You know what? We did our best. We did not win this one. I'm gonna vote for the actual candidate." But
but Rose, I wouldn't have been shocked if Chase's people had acted the same way. Some of them.
probably. Oh, it's entirely possible.
Yeah, and I think that's important to stress here. It's just, uh, and I think like a lot of people also were just said, well, we also got to nominate our vice president, and then after that, we want to go to bed. We don't want to stay here till 6 a.m. in the morning to work on this. I think that was a factor. You know, Uh, so it was certainly a yeah, it was a ver I mean, I don't think we ever had a presidential ticket that took that many rounds to be nominated,
Really? Okay.
7 rounds, yeah, it's a
Well, I mean, that was my first national, so
well, you can go back through the Wikipedia pages and look it all up too,
right.
just seeing how, because for whatever reason, 2 rows, we have a lot more people running for president, and I really like to know why.
Hmm. Well,
I mean,
because we're libertarians, okay? We
well,
everyone has their ideas about the right way to do libertarianism, and they think they're the only ones that can do it right. So of course we're gonna have lots of people because we have so much infighting.
I will from a personal selfish standpoint here, I decided, early 2023, I was gonna try to get all the presidential candidates on here, and and after a while, it just became a kind of a pain in the ass, and I thought, "Oh, no, there's another." I mean, and I just, because at 2004, there were 3 people.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and kinda 2 or 3 at some of the previous ones. I don't know if the growth of the internet or social media has something to do with it, and when we have
Joke candidates like Toad running.
yeah, and when we had 3 people from California running for president, but then we couldn't get anybody to run for governor of California 2 years earlier, I'm just kinda scratching my head and asking, "Why didn't they run for governor of California?" It's like,
Right. Something that could actually, yeah, get support behind it. Yeah. So
and not to mention it's a lot less work to run for a governor than it is to run for president.
I wonder, like, because I did not like the idea of like, what was it? There was like some, oh, what was it called? There was this like fundraising thing where only the top 5 candidates who got the most donations were going to be allowed to debate. And I didn't like that idea at the time, but I
Well
guess I can kind of understand like some kind of mechanism to limit the number of candidates you have running.
Texas initially did that, but the difference was Texas limited everybody to a $100 donation. The problem with national was they didn't put a limit on it, so somebody could theoretically buy their way into the convention debates,
Okay.
and, I don't have any proof, but because but yeah, it was kind of a and that's another thing too, I think, I wasn't supporting Joshua Smith, but it certainly seemed like a lot of people would have voted for him if they could have went there, but they didn't have the money to. It seemed like maybe he was the poor libertarians candidate, and I hate it when people are disenfranchised just because they don't have the resources to go to the convention.
Well, there was like that was actually one of the original splinter factions of the Mises Caucus. Like there was like this whole big thing with Joshua Smith's loyalists. Like there was this whole big thing where like all the state organizers in the months leading up to convention got purged, and then we all had to like sit through basically an interrogation to make sure that we were not Joshua Smith's spies because somebody had been leaking screenshots to Joshua Smith's people.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It's kind of weird. It was funny though.
It's interesting.
And,
Oh,
it's funny. The Mises Caucus suddenly made a truce with Joshua after Chase got the nomination. I mean,
oh yeah.
if the Mises Caucus was so dead set against Chase, they should have had Rechtenwald drop out and then have all of them endorse Termott. That would have
Oh,
that would
one
have
of the
kept them from
reasons.
getting it. I mean, that would have been kind of weird, but it would have worked.
No, one of the reasons why Rechtenwald lost was that, yeah, they were Joshua Smith loyalists who said, like, they were because at the time, the Mises Caucus, even at the time of convention, they were still allowing some amount of dissent. Like, there were people on the
Yes.
convention Discord saying, "No, we're never voting for Rechtenwald, okay? Cope and see if we're Joshua Smith loyalists." Then there were Mike Termott supporters as well. They have completely cracked down on dissent ever since, and they'll just boot anybody who even remotely disagrees with them now. But
Yeah.
yeah, they allowed dissent even going into DC, and then I think they wrongly blame the fact that they allowed dissenters for their loss rather than actually taking time to critically examine why they've lost, supporters and why they alienated so many people.
So many people in the Libertarian Party, when they lose, they don't want to seem to look in the mirror. I don't get it. The people who lost in Reno are the same way.
Mhm.
They want to act like it was just and I to use the World Series analogy, after the Dodgers beat the Yankees, can you imagine all the Yankees going on social media and saying, "Oh, the Dodgers suck. I hate the Dodgers," and all this stuff? But
Yeah.
that's what all these people did when Chase got the nomination. It was so And to his credit, Rechtenwald never I don't think Rechtenwald ever bashed Chase. I didn't see anything.
No, he kinda went off and did his own thing.
The
Well,
people at Mises Caucus, because I think, I think they kinda used Rechtenwald. I don't even know if they're
oh, I definitely I
I don't
got
think
that vibe pretty much immediately when I met him at the New York convention. I'm like, "This guy, does he know what he's gotten himself into?" I think it was yeah, my, partner even, like, kinda jokingly asked, he's like, "So how did they talk you into being their nominee?"
Michael Rechtenwald actually sent me a message on Facebook on the 23rd of August in 2023 and said, "The Mises Caucus wants me to run for president." And I really wish I'd just told him, "No, don't do this.
Yeah.
Don't do this. Stay away from this." And I just said something like, "I think you'll be great." And, I didn't really think much about it. And uh, I, I think his biggest flaw was simply the fact that he'd never run for office before.
Right, no, he's an academic, he was not cut out for campaigning and being
Well,
a ver
maybe you start out running for a county office, then maybe you run for a state office, and then
right,
maybe you run for president. But because it really messed up his life, and he's a good guy. And we also need Michael Rechtenwald, the academic, and he probably
what?
serves our cause better by being Michael Rechtenwald, the academic, than being Michael Rechtenwald, the candidate.
Right, that's what I said, like, and, like, he did a lot of flip-flopping 'cause, like, at one point, he said that, he was willing to work with Chase Oliver and, like, advise him on economics and stuff, but I don't think that really panned out. Because yeah, he's a very intelligent guy, like, and
Oh yeah,
I talked to him for a while at the convention, like, yeah, he knows a lot, he has a lot of good ideas, but he kinda went in an odd direction following the,
well,
Libertarian convention, but yeah, I don't think he's a bad person,
I politely told him a few weeks before the convention, Michael, you use too many big words,
Mhm.
and he didn't seem to understand why that was a problem. And so it's like, okay, this look at Milei. He's really smart too, Michael, but he doesn't use big words when he's talking to the plumbers and the construction workers.
Yeah. Yeah, knowing again, like I said, knowing how to actually message to the political normies or the
Yes.
liberty curious folks, it's an art form.
Yes, and, if you're good at speaking to libertarians, that doesn't mean you're good at speaking to everybody else.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of libertarians out there who are very good at speaking to libertarians.
I mean, I'm one of them, like, learning how to tone things down and sell it to people, like yeah.
And there are a lot of good academics who are really good at going into those lecture halls and speaking to those other academics, but then they just yeah. I hope Michael's a good guy. I hope he sticks with what he goes back to. And I felt the same way about Dave Smith. Said, well, if Dave Smith, we lose Dave Smith the comedian if he becomes Dave Smith the candidate? I
Right,
really
'cause
wonder
I
about
they lost a lot of energy, I think, when Dave Smith decided he wasn't gonna run. Because I think a lot of people joined the Mises Caucus because they had been listening to his podcast. Like, I mean, okay, yeah, I mean, he actually I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he in general, though, he knows how to sell libertarian ideas, and he knows how to talk to regular people.
well,
So, yeah.
but if Dave Smith becomes Dave Smith the candidate, how do you know Rogan is just going to say, "Well, I don't want to bring you on now because you're running for office"? I That would not shock me. I mean, that's when people are going to treat him differently because he's the candidate, and maybe they won't. Maybe he won't get back on Rogan. Is my whole point because Rogan hasn't really been that friendly to the Libertarian Party. Uh, but this also brings me, to another issue with Chase and the campaign. And I think the people who lost in Reno need to realize that the Mises Caucus would not have won without podcasting. And as much as I certainly voted for Chase, but Chase announced his candidacy on Gary Nolan's radio show, and which
Mhm.
is fine. Gary Nolan's a cool dude. He ran for president back in 2004, but uh, that's the old media, and I don't think Chase really tried to get on the new media. And I don't know what was exchanged between, say, Dave Smith and Chase or some other people in Chase, but Chase should have moved heaven and earth to get on Dave Smith's show if he could have.
Right. I think wasn't I think he actually was on once way back when he was running for Senate in Georgia, right? I think I remember him being on there. Could be
Was
wrong.
he? I'll have to check that out. But Chase just kind of says, "Well, Dave Smith can email me." It's like Chase,
Yeah.
Chase. Here's the deal: if somebody with 1,000 Twitter followers, I mean, this is how I view it. If
Yeah. He did yeah, I mean, he kinda did the podcast circuit, but no, I see what you're
he
saying, though.
he came on my show and I loved having him on,
Yeah,
I don't know if he really trusted me, but Chase, it's like this. You've got 34,000 Twitter followers. So when somebody out there with a 500,000 Twitter followers has a show and they talk about it, you have to make the effort. They're not going to come after you because your numbers are lower.
right.
They now it and now if it's somebody who has 1,000 Twitter followers, yeah, you make them come after you, and they'll be happy to have you because they wanna get more followers, but it's
Right, because it's about them. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, podcasting is where it's at now, okay? That's how we do our
yeah.
messaging,
That's
so
that's where a lot of it is, and I do, and this is something else too. I do wanna give credit for Tom Woods also. He had Joe Bishop Henchman on in 2000 as
mhm.
well as Joe Jorgensen. Tom seemed like he was friendly to the LP, but then after Chase got nominated, he just completely threw it all under the bus.
Yeah, I have not followed him in a long time, so, yeah,
Yeah.
he seems like he kinda disappeared. He's always kinda had his own little, like, media ecosystem where he sells his
Oh,
classes.
yes, he does. Yeah,
Yeah.
he does, but
I followed him when I was first learning Austrian economics, because some of his introductory stuff was helpful, but I feel like I kinda outgrew most of his content.
I thought the best strength about Chase's campaign was, Chase, there are 5 guys here, 5 people 70 plus, and you're 39. Go with that. It's,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah, you could do one of those attack ads. They're just a 70-something-year-old heartbeat away from, yeah.
but that would certainly be more appeal to the younger voters, which I think is which would have gotten more younger people in. I do want to defend Chase on the whole thing of not appearing on Culture War.
Yeah.
He had to be in New Hampshire to fill out ballot access paperwork that day, so there wasn't really anything. I don't know what he could have done, but to work something out. But I certainly, and this is one thing I do, and to their credit, Rechtenwald, Angela, and maybe a few other people from the Mises Caucus have been on Timcast. I was actually, after Chase got the nomination, I thought, well, maybe if we get Clint in there, we can get access to Timcast and maybe play both sides. But I don't know if Chase and Clint would have even talked to each other. But
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
yeah,
Hmm.
having our candidate on Timcast and other places, I think would have been a boon. I don't
Yeah.
this and this is what's so much I think with the LP was that they were just so much of let's just keep doing things the way we've always done them. Don't make any
Well,
adjustments.
I mean, this is the first time, though, we've had a party chair that blatantly endorses an opposition
Yeah,
candidate well, so, I mean, that's
I can't. Yeah, I can't defend that. I just
yeah.
yeah, her this is the thing too. If
And
you're not happy with the candidate, then you can just be quiet about it. You don't need
that's
to.
the thing.
Not everybody. Yeah, and there's
You don't
some of the criticism of things of Chase just seems so unfair.
right. Like, when you joined the party, you and became a delegate and, yeah, became involved in your state party, like, you agreed that you were going to respect the wishes of the delegates at the national convention. If you can't do that, you can leave and you can join a different party, you can form your own party, you can get behind an independent candidate. But yeah, like you can't just like what's even the point in having a
Yes.
national convention if state parties can just decide, you know what, we don't like the candidate, we're not going to endorse it. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
what
and
is
then
the point?
of course, the Mises Caucus gets mad at Karen Ann Harlos because she submitted the paperwork to
Uh
get
huh.
Chase on the ballot in Colorado, and
Well, that was kind of the final straw with me when they decided to try to remove her from. Yeah.
well, here's the thing too, Rose. If the previous administrations, if they'd given it some thought, I mean, in 2021, they made Karen Ann Harlos a martyr. If they don't throw her off the LNC at that time, maybe the Reno reset doesn't happen.
Uh huh.
And
He had
I
very.
can't believe you're not thinking about these things.
I
And
don't.
the people who threw Karen Ann off the LNC are now rallying around her. It's just you look what you look
Oh yeah.
ridiculous.
I've joked about this. Like the Caucus that supposedly understands Austrian economics, yeah, exhibiting extremely high time preference behavior, and they have been for a while. 'Cause
Yeah. The only criticism I have of Karen Ann is I think she does like to be the center of attention, but I think she has her heart is in the right place. She really cares about liberty and cares about the party.
she's
Yeah,
principled and she's consistent, and that's the problem with being consistent, though.
yeah,
People will like you until all of a sudden they don't.
yeah, they
Once
don't.
your consistency and your principles become inconvenient to them, and that's what I saw happening with the Mises Caucus. They loved her dedication to upholding rules and, yeah, her knowledge of Robert's rules when it was convenient to them. But then, yeah, as soon as that became inconvenient, suddenly they want to remove her as quickly as they can. Because I mean,
Yeah,
I remember hearing all these rumors. Oh, Angela and the Mises Caucus are secretly working for the Republicans. Okay, I'd been dismissing that for months. Then the whole thing with Trump getting invited
yeah,
happens. People are like, "See, this confirms what we were saying." I'm like, "No, she claims that she sent invites to both Trump and Biden, and Trump accepted." So I was completely against the idea. Like, don't get me wrong on that. But like at the time, like I bought the explanation that yeah, he'd been invited and he accepted. I'm like, he's doing it for obviously self-serving reasons, and they're being played. But yeah, and then later on, she reveals that she'd been having secret meetings with him and talking to him since
yeah.
I think the previous, like, yeah, fall 2023, I think.
I you know, I have to say just on principle, I really don't want anybody at any libertarian event that would ask us to put up metal detectors.
Oh, yeah. The way
That
this
just seems to
line
go against the
route,
spirit of what we stand for. It really does, and, this was maybe the bigger issue is I don't know what did having Trump cost us just in security costs and other things.
I
I
asked
mean,
that. I
I don't really know, and I was at CPAC earlier that year, and they had Trump speak, and I know having Trump speak just how much that put through like, you have closed off hallways, and you can only go to certain spaces at the time, and I don't know what you did, but David Roberson and I, we just when Trump was speaking, we just disappeared, and I think a lot of people just left the hotel entirely and went out to eat, and then we went back to our room and did other just and then we maybe did other things because a lot
well,
of people just didn't care, and yeah, I thought that was crazy.
I
I
went
really I don't have a problem with inviting Vivek. I don't also I have no problem with Thomas Massey being at LP
yeah.
National. I think he's basically one of us, even though he's not officially one of us. But I'm not gonna lower the bars. I'm not gonna set the bar so low that we'll invite Trump. That we're gonna invite Trump, we might as well I mean, who won't we invite?
Exactly, and I had this conversation, they're like, "This is our opportunity to talk to him." I'm like, "You idiots, you think you're actually gonna get a chance to have a dialogue with him? He's using us to do a campaign stop because at the time it was shaping up to be a very close election, and he needed all the votes he could get, and he needed the Libertarian Party votes, okay? And we happened to have a chair who was easily flattered into thinking that she was some brilliant political strategist who was going to get concessions from Trump and be able to work with him. No, he was getting votes that he needed. Then, as soon as he was elected, he stopped needing the Libertarian Party. Oh, yeah, where did that Libertarian in the cabinet position
Yeah.
go? What happened with that?
Well, the guy's a player, and he's been playing people his whole
He's
life.
a lifelong
Been
con artist.
making deals with I mean, yeah, he's been doing that with people his whole life. It's like,
And yeah,
Angela, he's more experienced at this game than you are. It's
huh?
and the older the longer you play that game, the better you get at it. He's I don't and I think one thing is too is like the people who picked DC. I said, well, maybe if you'd had it at Reno again, you wouldn't have had this problem. It's you know,
So you actually didn't go to the Trump speech?
yeah. Oh no, I didn't go.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't. I didn't.
we went out. Some of us went out. We went off site and went out to eat and just kind of hung around and
Probably a better use of your time. Yeah, I went because everyone else
used
went.
my time. Yeah,
Oh god, that
I
stupid
think a lot of
cash
people
bar
just
is like
yeah, a lot of people
$15
I think
for a
just
drink,
left.
and they watered them down, but I didn't realize till after the fact just how close it came to turning into a massive brawl several times. Like, yeah, the Trump supporters and the libertarians nearly got into it a few times, as I later learned.
That I don't know if that would have been good publicity or bad publicity.
It would have been memorable, definitely.
It really would have shown. Yeah, I it's really hard to say. Yeah, there were a lot of There was a lot there, but Angela is not the same person that I knew 5 years ago.
Oh,
It's
yeah, no, I agree. Like,
yeah, she's and to her, of all the things, I think the best quality Angela had is I think she understands, and she still seems to understand that you have to try to make this stuff fun.
yeah.
She'll make that silly joke now and then, and she's not as funny as she used to be, but when Angela said, "I wanna have a roast," I thought, do this, yes, this is a great idea."
Yeah, I mean, I supported her for a long
Yeah,
time.
I said, "Go on," I thought about this, you could go on you could do a Zoom do a roast on Zoom. Do it every month and just try to turn it into a fundraiser. It wouldn't cost anything, but something, Rose, and then and I posted this on Facebook, and I tried to keep the roast idea alive 'cause roasts are hilarious. I mean,
Yeah.
go up
They
on
have
YouTube,
that
some
Pork Fest, I think.
yeah, go up and look some of the Dean Martin celebrity roasts or some of those other things, and they're just people just are laughing, and, it's people are and what's funny is everybody walks out just being best friends, and, and everybody walks out being best friends, and but, I remember thinking about this, and, this was on February 13th. I sent this message to Angela, quote, "I'm trying to keep your roast idea alive. Unfortunately, I don't think there is much point. While most outside the LP could make it work, people in the LP are too uptight and too autistic to make it worthwhile. They don't understand that roasts are play and not real life, and some of them just don't know how to laugh at all."
Yeah, that's bullshit, but she'd been see, that's the problem. Like,
Well,
just
you think what I said's bullshit, or
the amount of shit talking she does of actual libertarians, like, I'm sorry, that, like, the libertarian groups are one of the few places you can go to not have people call you a lolbert and not, like, poke fun at the fact that you're autistic. Like, yeah.
well, yeah,
So to
but
have someone supposedly running the party shitting on libertarians for these for our like, for these traits, yeah, not
those
gonna
are
work.
my words, not her. I agree. You can't say those things when you're in a position when you're in a management position. But
Yeah,
yes,
you
I
don't
really
shit on your party members for being autistic.
but I don't mind I was shitting on the party members, not Angela. Please be aware of that. That's what I said.
Right, yeah. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I guess, yeah, it's one thing with when you're, like, in a leadership position versus just
I'm not I
as a general
those were
manager.
my words, not Angela's.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just, I well, I don't know. It all depends, I remember after the 3rd game of the NBA Finals in 1984, and the Celtics were down 2-1, and Larry Bird said his teammates were playing like a bunch of sissies. They ended up winning the title is the whole point. Sometimes if you say things like that, you can fire your people up, but you have to do it in a way that fires people up. I don't know if she could have fired people up, but
I guess if you yeah, I guess if you do it correctly, like but versus just I guess on, like, social media, like, it just yeah, for months and months before she stepped down, like, it was just it just came across as her needlessly shitting on libertarians and throwing them under the bus because she was endorsing, a member of a different party and had obviously thrown her weight behind, a member of the Republican Party.
well, it's hard to be, do you wanna be part of a club where it seems like everybody hates everybody else? It's just sometimes it feels that way. I think I don't know what
It is, it gets rough, yeah.
we're going to do about the culture of the party, it's just
Thing is, though, I mean, how much worse do you think it is in the major parties, though? Like, when there's actual money behind, everything, and, like,
could be.
I don't think you get dunked on social media. I think, a family member gets into an unfortunate accident if you don't do what you're told. So, like, the idea that it's worse in the Libertarian Party, yeah. Like, this is still the little leagues. Like, this is where like, we're a combination of people, like, I think us, who joined, for the purpose of networking and finding like-minded people to do activism, and then there are people who join because they're wannabe politicians and this is their foot in the door. Like, they think that if they can get into a leadership position, that's gonna give them the ability
Mhm.
to get, to build up their resume so that they can join one of the major parties. You get a lot of wannabe corrupt politicians
Well,
in this party who are not actually good at being corrupt politicians.
a lot of people get involved with the LP and then they end up, uh, they still care about it, but they end up going somewhere else. We there was a lady here who was one, was like the one person who worked in the office for LP Texas, and now she's been heavily involved with the marijuana policy project. You end up with a lot of people do use the LP as a springboard to go somewhere. That's true. And, not to go to the parties, but like I said, maybe to go to work for the marijuana policy project or
That's not bad, like, using
yeah.
it to get involved in an actual, like, single issue thing.
I do not begrudge I really don't begrudge anybody who leaves the LP and goes to work on something like that. If they go
Right,
to if they
like
go to work for the bad guys, I do, but not if they're still working for a good cause.
right, yeah, definitely.
Uh, there was I knew another guy who was when he was working at Liberty Magazine. They said I got a job offer from U.S. Term Limits and it paid a lot better. He said, "Okay, yeah, go to U.S. Term Limits." It's not necessarily a libertarian issue, but if that's a good political cause, go do it. It's yeah, I don't know where that. Yeah, you have this weekly show on LP Alliance. What's all going on with that? It seems like you're having some good talks there. It's
Oh, yeah, yeah, so LP Alliance is, we're basically an inter-caucus, coalition of basically anyone who wants to restore accountability and principles to the Libertarian Party. Like, we have everything from libertarian socialists to conservative constitutionalists. If we can agree that we want, basically, we want more transparency and we want to end monocaucus rule. So we're not anti Mises necessarily. Like, we have a lot of people, well, people like me, we have former Mises members. We even work with some people who are still involved in their state Mises Caucus chapters. But yeah, we don't want the monocaucus thing anymore. Okay, we tried that. It did not do well. Uh it ended with the party selling out to one of the major parties. So, and yeah, we are completely against fusionism. We're against deliberately working with the Republicans or the Democrats. Like, we one of our main goals going into Grand Rapids is to make some necessary bylaws changes that would make it harder for one faction of the party to completely take over and hold the
Mhm.
LNC. Like, make it easier to recall officers who are violating their fiduciary duties.
Yeah. I hope we can get to bylaws and at the convention and maybe the platform too. It's I don't know if we'll
Well, it
ever get
needs
to
to
bylaws.
happen.
We
The
didn't get to
whole
bylaws at the last two conventions.
the whole thing with being able to avoid bylaws, like, I don't know how you could change that, but, uh, like, maybe there needs to be some way to make it mandatory because here's the thing, if there's a faction of the party that doesn't want certain bylaws changes to be made, like, you can deliberately drag out other,
Yes.
floor fights just to ensure that you can never get to bylaws.
Yeah. Well, apparently also I had not been to an LP National Nominated Convention. Apparently there was supposed to be a fourth day of business, which we did not use. We literally had the room, but we didn't use it. I don't know what was up with that. It's
That's interesting because a lot of people have said that they wanted to make it 4 days, but that always seems to get shot down.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, there definitely need to be some changes made, and I hope we can make the changes. I would say eliminate the ads. I would like to figure out some way to get less presidential candidates. Uh,
Maybe they have to have, maybe there need to be, some preliminary voting by,
I don't,
your
but I
major
don't how
state
I don't,
parties.
I have no idea how we would do that other than
I
just
agree.
put in a filing fee that they have to pay to LP National. But
'Cause, I support the idea that, rather than having the LNC be able to vote to remove other LNC officers, which makes it harder for there to be minority voices if other people can vote to remove you, like, maybe the membership body needs to be able to vote, or maybe the delegates, but, that would require some major changes, though, and, I've had people say, "Oh, yeah, but a lot of delegates, like, one, you'd have to make it so people could either vote electronically or by mail, and also there are delegates who leave the party within that 2-year span or something. So then, like, maybe, okay, maybe it would be, like, state party executive committees who could vote or something. I don't think that the LNC should be able to remove their own officers, and I think that there needs to be a mechanism for removing someone who's blatantly corrupt and blatantly endorsing another party's candidate. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like, Angela should have been removed sooner, but I think I don't think the party
Well,
had ever they never had to deal with that level of obvious corruption before, so there was no mechanism for recalling someone when something like that with another organization would have been a no-brainer.
well, there was a method to vote her out at the convention, but, it's, that's another thing too. I heard from Ken Molman that he said, maybe 17, he said a lot of state affiliates were almost out the door at that point. He said they were gonna leave. I think Chase's nomination could have possibly prevented some states from disaffiliating.
Oh, very likely.
I
But then Angela, though, I think
I
we're
think Ken Molman's a pretty reliable source, but you know,
yeah.
because he seems to know what's going on. He
Oh,
seems to
no, I agree, like, 'cause the Mises
yeah,
Caucus won most of their officer positions, but
I
then, like, I think Angela later said she was actually relieved when Chase Oliver ran, so I think she'd had the whole idea of working with the Trump campaign previously, like, she'd
yeah,
been planning that for a long time.
I don't know what the plans were, and, I do have to ask you, if you granted, you don't think it's gonna happen, but Rose, what do you do if your cell phone rings and somebody, "Hey, it's Donald Trump. I'd like to talk to you."
Right, yeah.
What are you gonna do? And, first of all, you're probably gonna say, "Okay, who is this really? It's not Donald Trump." That's the first reaction you're going to have. "Oh, yeah, this really is Donald." And, maybe, you probably think it's a prank, but, but, I mean, I'd probably if I had a chance to talk to Donald Trump, I'd try to talk to him. I would just bluff him. That doesn't mean I'd necessarily make a deal with him, but I wouldn't turn down the chance.
I mean, yeah, I would assume, "Oh, he needs my votes, of course," but no, I mean, some people are very easily corrupted by the offer of power. What should have been the major tip-off? Because Angela said this, I think sometime during the summer in 2024, like, mentioned that she had used her Christmas money to travel down to Mar-a-Lago to talk to him. I'm like,
Yeah.
"If you were that important, he would have paid for your, ticket, I think."
Well, and this is the whole thing too, and I realize now that politics is just about, I try to make somebody else my useful idiot, and they try to make me their useful idiot, and
Uh-huh.
who ends up losing? And really, it's just, that's one nice thing about voting Libertarian and voting for candidates that always lose. I can say that I was never anybody's useful idiot, but I was Angela's useful idiot because I supported her for chair.
Right.
But, yeah, it's a and I now feel the obligation to make that up, and I wanna be careful that we don't I wanna be careful we try to stick we
I mean, yeah, I
there's
feel
still a
for
lot of things we don't know here, but
party.
there's I don't know if we're ever going to know. It's just the same way, Joe Bishop Henchman's emails got deleted. I mean, and never got backed up. I seems like to me, maybe we need to figure out ways to conduct our own investigations, but I don't think we have the money to hire people who really know how to investigate these things.
Well, there are people actually who are, I think, raising money to try to hire an independent investigation, firm for I mean, there needs to be an independent investigation into the financial dealings of the LP. I know
Yes.
that the internal investigation, from what I understand, that's still ongoing, so they can't really share details yet, but,
Yeah.
there needs to definitely be an outside investigation.
Well, just the same way we should have had some type of investigation into what happened with LP&H
Oh, yeah, I agree.
in 2021, because I that was another thing that really, I think, sent people over to the Mises Caucus was that little
Uh-huh.
bit. And that was also when the Mises Caucus said, "We're just gonna go in and take every position. We're not gonna try to," because they allowed a non-Mises Caucus person to be chair of LP&H, and then she tried to create a new party and say they all resigned.
Oh, that was yeah, um,
That was
remember at
nuts.
the time, that was yeah, that was what got so many of us on their side because that was what really drove home the point that they were just like this minority faction trying to do the right thing, and that there were these corrupt bureaucrats who just didn't want them to win because they didn't want to lose their
Yeah,
positions. Yeah, I mean,
but
because
I understand.
in hindsight, my sympathies are with the old LPNH leadership who didn't want to hand it over to people like the people currently running it. But
Well, the
yeah,
Twitter
they
account, yeah.
did blatantly violate their own bylaws, and
Yeah,
yeah, and it backfired because it got more people to support the Mises Caucus. Like, there is definitely a lesson in that.
and the saddest, Rose, the saddest part about the Reno reset is that I think a lot of the people who lost in Reno have absolutely positively refused to learn anything from that loss. If they get back into the same positions that they had before, they're gonna keep doing the same they were gonna do the same things that they did before and not
Right.
make any changes at all.
Well, I think that we do still need some new blood.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
we know
definitely.
what works and what doesn't. We need to recruit, but we also, yeah, we need more checks against blatant corruption and blatant selling out.
But I also realize that most people in the liberty movement just follow whatever think tanks or bloggers or podcasters or whatever, and that all comes together at the Libertarian Party. And if these and I think in some cases, the Libertarian Party would have been more principled if some of the organizations would have been more principled, and some of the intellectuals in the liberty movement would have been more principled. And we had so many people who just didn't speak up during the coronavirus nonsense, and it's really unfortunate. I wish I'd had my podcast before then. I mean, I probably would have gotten a lot of listeners there because I would have been talking about it.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
probably because a lot of people kind of got their start during the COVID years. People more and more were listening to alternative media. A lot of podcasts were taking off. A lot of them gained tons of viewers.
And now you can go back and on your old stuff and say, "Hey, these guys were right." It's a yeah, I don't know. I hope it all works out. Unfortunately, I also know the current regime is there are definitely some international libertarians who are not happy with what's happened here. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah. The name libertarian is it's going to take some time to recover. Based on like people who I know who did the on the ground campaigning and signature collecting. Yeah, saying, "Oh, libertarians? You mean like those people who post racial slurs all day on the internet? No, I'm not signing this petition." Like, yeah, we've got our work cut out for us, definitely.
yeah, it's gonna the thing is, it seems like people have shorter memories now, so maybe that helps us, but
Perhaps.
I don't know where we go from here. I've had a lot of international people on my show, and I don't know if would Milei get involved with us? I don't think he would. I mean, I think he'd say, "What the hell is going on here?" In Spanish, of course, but
Possibly, yeah.
and I don't know if we'd have the culture to produce a Milei, but also I don't the system here is yeah, Rose, that's one thing I didn't ask you about. Do you think there's any way was there would there have been any way to have gotten on the ballot in New York?
Uh, in theory, 45,000 signatures. In practice, that means at least 70,000 because they will find any excuse to
Yes.
disqualify signatures.
And so what would that have required then?
What we need is a legal change to okay, what
But
happened was
maybe it
we
would have required what, 100,000, $200,000 maybe if you paid petitioners?
that was tried actually,
Okay.
2022 governor campaign, yeah, Larry Sharpe had paid petitioners, and that whole thing was a shit show. Because then I think there were some that were actually just scammers that took the money and didn't collect signatures,
Yeah.
and it didn't go well. Yes, this was
Yeah.
all thanks to the governor making a unilateral decision because he was angry at the Working Families Party and just trying to fuck with them. And so basically he just unilaterally raised the signature threshold to get a candidate on the ballot from 15,000 to 45,000. So then Libertarian Party was actually collateral damage there. I think in general, like, because we probably pull more from the Republican Party, Like, I don't think the Democrats actually minded the Libertarian Party existing, but we were just collateral damage. He was angry at the Working Families Party for some reason and trying to get back at them.
Well, yeah, there are some people said, wanted to blame Angela for that, and I don't think there was anything that
Oh, no, that's not her fault.
I
That's
mean,
one thing that I won't
this
blame her for,
this is
but
what's
that's ridiculous.
so much the criticism that's been directed toward Angela and so much of the criticism that was directed toward Nick Sarwark was just so blatantly unfair. I mean, I can't believe how unfair some of the attacks are in this party, and I don't know how we fix this. It's
Yeah.
really I don't know if you have any ideas. I just wanted to talk here and have a rap session about the current state of the LP. Uh,
Well, I mean, I think okay, I've been joking for a while that we just need a national party that the state parties can safely ignore, that's not gonna light the libertarian image on fire every 5 minutes, okay? Because yeah, in general, we should be focusing on our states. Like, here in New York, we like, after the last round of, voting at our last convention, I decided that we're going to focus on things like actual political activism. We started a new committee where, like, we've been putting together plans for on the ground activism. Like, we have one for things like park cleanup. We have one for lobbying against local regulations that affect people's lives. Like, we're focusing on specific issues such as ending qualified immunity for police officers. So, like, I think that's the way to go. And then at the county level, like our county party, like we do informational sessions where like we'll have a theme um for each meeting. Like at one, like we were like sharing names of people who produce food locally, like in learning like who to buy like a quarter of a cow from because we have these weird regulations in New York where you can't buy steaks from the farmer down the street, but you can buy a quarter of a cow. So, yeah, basically things like building skill sharing networks and, yeah, learning how to source food locally so that, to reduce reliance on the system. We started up like a Bitcoin wallet that, we're hoping to share between different county parties that will serve as kind of a mutual aid fund for members.
no, that's good. Yeah, I'm glad you're doing some good work there. Yeah, I think doing community work certainly makes us look good.
Right, and then we also have people, of course, who are running for local office and,
Yeah,
like, a member of our county party, a longtime member, is running for mayor as, he's running as a Republican because you have to run as one of the major 2 parties to have any chance of winning in New York State. So he can't hold an officer position, obviously, and we can't directly support him, but we're endorsing him and, yeah, we're hoping that he wins, and we're still supporting him in any way that we can.
yeah, and we were actually doing some work down at the state legislature this week because it's that time of it happens every 2 years, but the Texas state legislature is in session, so we try to get some things passed that will help us or not hurt us. So it's been an interesting time. There's really there's a lot of we have got a lot of people here in Texas do work hard. Also I got to I got to call out Indiana because I've heard they've got a really great state affiliate there.
Mhm.
Uh, from what Ken Molman says, they actually get the most money per capita, which is a good. And maybe we can let. This is another thing too is you don't necessarily want a politician to be your chair. You want somebody who just knows how to run things, and that might be kind of a boring person.
Oh, yeah, no, our the chair of the LPNY, a guy that has a a very long background in direct action and political activism and knows how to do,
Yep.
on the ground, activism. Like, that's kind of what we want. That's because I believe that the Libertarian Party, as was its original purpose, should be a front for education and local activism. And then the National Party exists to help get our message out there and recruit people to their state and local affiliates.
Yes, really all the National Party does is it does the convention and nominates a presidential ticket, and that's about it. I mean,
Yeah,
I if we could not have it, if we could just get rid of the national ticket at all, I think I'd be fine. But then that would hurt our ballot access in some states.
yeah,
We're kind of forced to have a presidential candidate, although I don't think it does that much good for us.
right. And that's why I'm involved. Yeah, have a national party that will. uphold its obligations and not destroy our public image and help direct people to our state and our local parties, and I'll be happy.
It seems like some of the worst fights, though, happen at the national level. It seems like people at the state conventions are pretty much getting along. So
Oh, yeah.
it's
I mean,
I
I know of some states that are, oh god, a total shit show and that I do not envy them at all. New York generally does not have this problem. Like, you'd have, like,
yes.
even with the Mises when they controlled a significant portion of the state, committee, like, you'd see occasional snide remarks on our Discord server, but in general, people could get together and hang out at conventions and, be friends.
Yeah,
That's just the case in some states.
I find it easy to understand how the Mises Caucus was able to take over Pennsylvania because some of the people who are running things there were just plain awful. But,
Right.
uh, but yeah, it's just, but it's well, you have anything else to say before we go, Rose? I think where can we find you out there? I'm gonna
Oh, you can find me, let's see, LPNY on our Libertarian Party of New York YouTube channel. We now have our own podcast. It's called The Liberty Test. Usually record every Wednesday, so you can find us
yes,
there. You can find me on X under Saint of Liberty, and you can find me on Facebook and all the usual places.
and I'm totally a regular because I don't do shows live. I hope we'll get this out soon, but, yeah, of course, I'm yeah, I haven't talked that much about LP drama. It's just I think that's why I got so into melee. I just wanted to avoid talking about what's happening here, but
Understandable.
yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, go buy my novel Escape from the Village, check out my Substack. People are giving me money at buymeacoffee.com. Thank you, Rose Leatherman. I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.